Deus Ex is a cyberpunk-themed action role-playing video game of combining first-person shooter, stealth and role-playing elements, developed by Ion Storm and published by Eidos Interactive in 2000. First published for personal computers running Microsoft Windows, Deus Ex was later ported to Mac OS systems and PlayStation 2. Set in a dystopian world during the year 2052, the central plot follows rookie United Nations anti-terrorist coalition agent J.C. Denton, as he sets out to combat terrorist forces, which have become increasingly prevalent in a world slipping ever further into chaos. As the plot unfolds, Denton becomes entangled in a deep and ancient conspiracy, encountering organizations such as Majestic 12, the Illuminati and the Hong Kong Triads during his journey. The game received universal critical acclaim, including repeatedly being named Best PC Game of All Time in PC Gamer's Top 100 PC Games in 2011 and in a poll carried out by UK Gaming magazine PC Zone. It was a frequent candidate for and winner of Game of the Year awards, drawing praise for its pioneering designs in player choice and multiple narrative paths. It has sold more than 1 million copies, as of April 23, 2009. The game has spawned both the sequel, Deus Ex: Invisible War, released in 2003, and a prequel, Deus Ex: Human Revolution, released in 2011. Gameplay: Deus Ex incorporates elements from 4 video game genres: role-playing, first-person shooter, adventure, and immersive simulation. The last of which being a game where nothing reminds you that you're just playing a game. For example, the game uses a first-person camera during gameplay and includes exploration and character interaction as primary features. The player assumes the role of J.C. Denton, a nanotech-augmented operative of the United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition. This nanotechnology is a central gameplay mechanism, and allows players to perform superhuman feats. Role-playing elements: as the player accomplishes objectives, the player character is rewarded with skill points. Skill points are used to enhance a character's abilities in 11 different areas, and were designed to provide players with a way to customize their characters. A player might create a combat-focused character by increasing proficiency with pistols or rifles, while a more furtive character can be created by focusing on lockpicking and computer hacking abilities. There are 4 different levels of proficiency in each skill, with the skill point cost increasing for each successive level. Weapons may be customized through weapon modifications, which can be found or purchased throughout the game. The player might add scopes, silences, or laser sights, increase the weapon's range, accuracy, or magazine size, or decrease its recoil and reload time. Not all modifications are available to all weapons. For example, a rocket launcher cannot be silenced, and recoil cannot be reduced on a flamethrower. Players are further encouraged to customize their characters through nano-augmentations, cybernetic devices that grant characters superhuman powers. While the game contains 18 different nano-augmentations, the player can install a maximum of 9, as each must be used on a certain part of the body. 1 in the arms, legs, eyes, and head, 2 underneath the skin, and 3 in the torso. This forces the player to choose carefully between the benefits offered by each augmentation. For example, the arm augmentation requires the player to decide between boosting their character's skill in hand-to-hand combat or his ability to lift heavy objects. Interaction with non-player characters was a large design focus. When the player interacts with a non-player character, the game will enter a cutscene-like conversation mode where the player advances the conversation by selecting from a list of dialogue options. The player's choices often have a substantial effect on both gameplay and plot, as non-player characters will react in different ways depending on the selected answer. Combat elements. Deus Ex features combat similar to first-person shooters, with real-time action, a first-person perspective, and reflex-based gameplay. As the player will often encounter enemies in groups, combat often tends toward a tactical approach, including the use of cover, strafing, and hit and run. A USA Today reviewer found, at the easiest difficulty setting, your character is parried again and again by an onslaught of human and robotic terrorists until you learn the value of stealth. However, through the game's role-playing systems, it is possible to develop a character's skills and augmentations to create a tank-like combat specialist with the ability to deal and absorb large amounts of damage. Non-player characters will praise or criticize the main character depending on his use of force, incorporating a moral element into the gameplay. Deus Ex features a head-up display crosshair, whose size dynamically shows where shots will fall based on movement, aim, and the weapon in use. The reticle expands while the player is moving or shifting his or her aim, and slowly shrinks to its original size while no actions are taken. How quickly the reticle shrinks depends on the character's proficiency with the equipped weapon, the number of accuracy modifications added to the weapon, and the level of the targeting nano-augmentation. Deus Ex features 24 weapons, ranging from crowbars, electroshock weapons, and riot baton, to laser-guided anti-tank rockets and assault rifles. Both lethal and non-lethal weapons are available. The player can also make use of several weapons of opportunity, such as fire extinguishers. Player choice. Gameplay in Deus Ex emphasizes player choice. Objectives can be completed in numerous ways, including stealth, sniping, heavy frontal assault, dialogue, or engineering and computer hacking. This level of freedom requires that levels, characters, and puzzles be designed with significant redundancy, as a single playthrough of the game will miss large sections of dialogue, areas, and other content. In some missions the player is encouraged to avoid using deadly force, and certain aspects of the story may change depending on how violent or non-violent the player chooses to be. The game is also unusual in that two of its boss villains can be killed off early in the game, or left alive to be defeated later, and this too affects how other characters interact with the player. Because of its design focus on player choice, Deus Ex has been compared with System Shock, a game that inspired its design. Together, these factors give the game a great degree of replayability, as the player will have vastly different experiences, depending on which methods he or she uses to accomplish objectives. Multiplayer. Deus Ex was designed as a single-player game, and the initial releases of the Windows and Macintosh versions of the game did not include multiplayer functionality. Support for multiplayer modes was later incorporated through patches. The component includes 3 game modes: Deathmatch, Basic Team Deathmatch, and Advanced Team Deathmatch. Only 5 maps, based on levels from the single-player portion of the game, were included with the original multiplayer patch, but many user-created maps now exist. The PlayStation 2 release of Deus Ex does not offer a multiplayer mode. In April 2014 it was announced that GameSpy would cease their master server services, also affecting Deus Ex. A community-made patch for the multiplayer mode has been created as a response to this. Synopsis. Setting and characters. Deus Ex takes place in the year 2052 in a world that draws heavily upon popular real-world conspiracy theories for many of its plot elements. These include speculations regarding black helicopters, vaccinations, and FEMA, as well as Area 51, the Echelon Network, Men in Black, Chupacabras, and Grey Aliens. Mysterious groups such as Majestic 12, the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission also either play a central part in the plot, or are alluded to during the course of the game. This dark setting is enhanced by the fact that the entire game takes place at night, a backdrop that adds to the atmosphere of conspiracies and stealth. The game contradicts itself in several instances regarding the exact year in which the events of the story take place, but information in the sequel Deus Ex: Invisible War reconciles this inconsistency via retroactive continuity, placing the events of Deus Ex in the year 2052. Most of the game takes place in fictionalized versions of real-world locations, including New York City, Hong Kong, Paris, Vandenberg Air Force Base, and Area 51. The plot of Deus Ex depicts a society on a slow spiral into chaos. There is a massive division between the rich and the poor, not only socially, but in some cities physically. A lethal pandemic known as the Grey Death ravages the world's population, especially within the United States, and has no cure. A synthetic vaccine, Ambrosia, manufactured by the company VersaLife, nullifies the effects of the virus, but is in critically short supply. Because of its scarcity, Ambrosia is available only to those deemed vital to the social order, and finds its way primarily to government officials, military personnel, the rich and influential, scientists, and the intellectual elite. With no hope for the common people of the world, riots occur worldwide, and a number of terrorist organizations have formed with the professed intent of assisting the downtrodden, among them the National Secessionist Forces of the U.S., and a French group known as Silhouette. In order to combat these threats to the world order, the United Nations has greatly expanded its governmental influence around the globe. The United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition is formed, with the intent of maintaining peace internationally and combating the world's ever-growing number of terrorist groups. It is headquartered near New York City in a bunker beneath Liberty Island, placed there after a terrorist strike on the Statue of Liberty. Alex Jacobson's character model and name are based on Warren Spector's own nephew, Alec Jacobson. Plot: the player assumes the identity of J.C. Denton, a nanotechnologically augmented UNATCO agent. After completing his training, J.C. takes several missions given by director Joseph Mandeli to track down members of the National Secessionist Forces and their stolen shipment of the Ambrosia vaccine, the treatment for the Grey Death virus. Through these missions, JC is reunited with his brother, Paul, who is also nano-augmented. JC tracks the Ambrosia shipment to a private terminal at LaGuardia Airport. Paul meets JC outside the plane, and explains that he has defected from UNATCO and is now working with the NSF after learning that the Grey Death is a man-made virus, with UNATCO using its power to make sure only the elite receive the vaccine. JC returns to UNATCO headquarters and is told by Mandeli that both he and Paul have been outfitted with a 24-hour kill switch, and that Paul's has been activated due to his betrayal. Mandeli orders JC to fly to Hong Kong to eliminate Tracer Tong, a hacker whom Paul has contact with, and who can disable the kill switches. Instead, JC returns to Paul's apartment to find Paul hiding inside. Paul further explains his defection and encourages JC to also defect by sending out a distress call to alert the NSF's allies. Upon doing so, JC becomes a wanted man by UNATCO, and his own kill switch is activated by Federal Emergency Management Agency Director Walton Simons. JC is unable to escape UNATCO forces, and both he and Paul are taken to a secret prison below UNATCO headquarters. An entity named Daedalus contacts JC and informs him that the prison is part of Majestic 12, and arranges for him and Paul to escape. The two flee to Hong Kong to meet with Tong, who deactivates their kill switches. Tong requests JC infiltrate the VersaLife building. Doing so, JC discovers that the corporation is the source for the Grey Death, and he is able to steal the plans for the virus and destroy the universal constructor that produces it. Analysis of the virus shows it was manufactured by the Illuminati. prompting Tong to send JC to Paris to try to make contact with the organization and obtain their help fighting Majestic 12. JC eventually meets with Illuminati leader Morgan Everett, and learns that the Grey Death virus was intended to be used for augmentation technology. But Majestic 12, led by trillionaire businessman and former Illuminatus Bob Page, was able to steal and repurpose it into its current viral form. Everett recognizes that without VersaLife's universal constructor, Majestic 12 can no longer create the virus, and will likely target Vandenberg Air Force Base, where X-51, a group of former Area 51 scientists, has built another one. After aiding the base personnel in repelling a Majestic 12 attack, JC meets X-51 leader Gary Savage, who reveals that Daedalus is an artificial intelligence born out of the Echelon program. Everett attempts to gain control over Majestic 12's communications network by releasing Daedalus onto the U.S. military networks, but Page counters by releasing his own AI, Icarus, which merges with Daedalus to form a new AI, Helios, with the ability to control all global communications. After this, Savage enlists JC's help in procuring schematics for reconstructing components for the UC that were damaged during Majestic 12's raid of Vandenberg. JC finds the schematics and electronically transmits them to Savage. Page intercepts the transmission and launches a nuclear missile at Vandenberg to ensure that Area 51 will be the only location in the world with an operational UC. However, JC is able to reprogram the missile to strike Area 51. JC then travels there himself to confront Page. When JC locates him, Page reveals that he seeks to merge with Helios and gain full control over all nanotechnology, essentially becoming a god. JC is contacted by Tong, Everett, and the Helios AI simultaneously. All three factions ask for his help in defeating Page, while furthering their own objectives, and JC is forced to choose between them. Tong seeks to plunge the world into a second dark age by destroying the global communications hub and preventing anyone from taking control of the world. Everett offers Denton the chance to bring the Illuminati back to power by killing Bob Page and using the technology of Area 51 to rule the world with an invisible hand. Helios wishes to merge with Denton and rule the world as a benevolent dictator with infinite knowledge and reason. The player's decision determines the course of the future, and brings the game to a close.